Honorary President Helmut Kutin, Dr. Mrs. Margaret Nkrumah, the immediate past principal of this famous school, and of course, now the chairman of the board, Mr. Titi Ofer, the principal and vice principal, Mr. Akita, administrative and faculty members, parents and caregivers, alumni, students, and new graduates, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you most sincerely for the honor of inviting me to speak on this very special occasion. Today we celebrate the class of 2015 and acknowledge the hard work of these students over the last 4 years. As today also marks the 25th anniversary of the college, we reflect on and acknowledge some of the many accomplishments of this school in the service of Ghana and Africa as a whole. Today, we salute Mr. Ofer, the Vice Principal, the Dean of the Studies, and all the dedicated faculty members and staff whose tutelage and unmatched commitment continue to carry out the vision of the founding president. They have indeed followed the tradition, the excellent tradition set by the first the first principal, Dr. Fairstein, and of course, Mrs. Nkrumah. Ladies and gentlemen, the Venerable Nelson Mandela once said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. For over 2 decades, this school has been a leader in delivering that potent weapon here in Ghana. You have earned an enviable reputation as a center of academic excellence for SOS children from all over Africa and non-SOS children from all walks of life. This school has set many on the path of professional success by implementing a rigorous academic scheme which subjects students to the highest national and international standards. You have and continue to provide opportunities for young Africans to learn to live together and to achieve the understanding and unity desperately needed on this continent. So to the class of 2015, I would like to congratulate you on reaching this milestone. You've worked very hard to get here, proving your merit, exams after exams. Savor your accomplishment. It is well deserved. Your graduation today marks the end of a journey which started 4 years ago. If I may say so, today also represents an important milestone in your learning journey. Think back on the last 4 years, giddy as you may feel today. It is the experiences you have had and the relationships you have built over the last 4 years that will carry with you throughout your life. In this new phase of your life, the stakes will be raised. For many of you, one of the first big decisions would include what course of study to pursue at university. I can tell you this can be a source of great anxiety because whichever decision you take will shape your life, maybe forever. Trust me, I've been here before. Decades ago, I completed at the Sada College, the best school in Ghana, of course. I was faced with the same challenge. What do I do with my A-level diploma? When I told my parents I wanted to be a mining engineer, they didn't like the idea, particularly my mother. She felt the industry was perhaps too fiscally challenging and perhaps it wasn't prestigious enough. And surely, I'm sure my mom wanted her 7th born to pursue a career in law or medicine. Initially, neither parent would give me their blessing, but I knew the career I wanted to pursue and I pressed them to change their minds. Eventually, my father most grudgingly gave in, but you know something, my mother never did until she died. Actually, the opposition I faced from her became a strong motivation for me. I took responsibility for my decision, and even as I respected her reservations, I determined that they were not going to discourage me from pursuing my dream. I was going to be the best mining engineer that I could be and prove to her that indeed I could do it. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm pleased I stuck with my decision. Now, as you strike out on your own, of course, you will need the guidance and support offered by your parents, family, and indeed friends. But ultimately, your decisions are yours. Don't, it's a quotation, don't let the noise of other people's opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. This is a quotation from Steve Jobs, and I thought it was poignant, and one that I hope you would hold on to. You must have your own vision for your life. You will have to take decisions to actualize that vision, and those decisions will mold the men and women you will become tomorrow. Be courageous. Don't be afraid to take charge of your destiny. Seize those opportunities, because they will be your chance to make your mark, to show the world who you truly are. Trust that your time here in this famous school has prepared you well. The curriculum and the programs like the Creative Action Service have turned out empathetic, compassionate, critical thinkers who have the knowledge and the ability to effect change in society. Don't be afraid to stick your neck out and break rules sometimes. Indeed, talking about sticking your neck out, I find the American author Ruth Westheimer's quote apt, and I quote, "My favorite animal is a turtle. The reason is that in order for the turtle to move, it has to stick its neck out." There are going to be times in your life when you're going to stick your neck out. There will be challenges, and instead of hiding in a shell, you have to go out there and meet them. End of quote. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've heard a lot. I wish I had compared those with Mr. Ansaha. We've heard a lot about failures and mistakes. Now, a word about failures and mistakes, of which there will be many. In this age of self-help, I'm sure you are familiar with the words of Confucius. Our greatest glory is not in never failing, but in never falling, but in rising every time you fall. Sometimes, in our arrogance, successful people would want you to believe that it's all been smooth sailing. Ladies and gentlemen, I have not met one successful person who has not had his fair share of failures and setbacks. In my own career, and indeed in my personal life, I've had more failures and setbacks than I've had successes. What has kept me going is I never give up. So I want you to develop a positive mental attitude that sees failures as learning experiences. I believe that if you are not failing, you are not growing. Where would we be? Think about it. If Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, or the Wright brothers have given in to failure, I'll tell you, Thomas Edison would have been not doomed, so doom permanent. Henry Ford would still have been on horseback. And of course, don't worry about making mistakes either. As the artist Neil Gaiman says, and I quote, "Make interesting mistakes, make amazing mistakes, make glorious and fantastic mistakes, but leave the world more interesting for you being here." And I would say, leave Africa much better off for you being here. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa is so blessed. We really ought not to be where we are. As you know, we live in the most resource-rich continent on the planet. We have 50% of the world's gold resources. We have 55% of the world's diamonds. We have 96% of the world's platinum. We have 10% of the world's global oil. We have millions of acres of arable land, and 40% of the world's potential hydroelectric power. In fact, the Grand Inga Dam on the Congo River has the capacity, when it's done, to light up the whole of Africa and export surplus energy to the rest of the world. And perhaps more importantly, Africa has the youngest population in the world, 200 million people aged between 15 and 24. In addition, we have in the main been spared some of the devastating earthquakes, torrential flooding, tropical cyclones, tsunamis that engulf other countries. With all these advantages, ladies and gentlemen, we really ought to be at the top of our game. Instead, paradoxically, we are the least developed of the continents. With all our arable land, 239 million of us are undernourished. Only 66% of Africans have access to clean water. Only 33% have access to sanitation, and only 40% for electricity. Our education systems are supposed to be the worst in the world, with UNESCO estimating that Africa will soon be home to 50% of the world's illiterate population. Ghana, it would interest you to know, is at the very bottom of a recently released global school ranking. 60% of Africa's youth are unemployed, not including those who are unemployed with low pay and few opportunities for advancement. Even worse, African countries have the lowest life expectancy on a global scale, ranging between 38 and 66 years of age. For comparison, Japan has an overall life expectancy of 87. Whilst Africa is touted to have some of the fastest growing economies, we can see that the ability to translate growth to economic and social advantages for the younger generations is relatively lower than in other emerging markets. Then, of course, there's the unmentionable. There's the issue of corruption. 30 out of the bottom 70 countries on the Corruption Perception Index are African countries. Now, a number of reasons have been given to explain this disjuncture between our resources and our place in the world. Over the years, many have put forward theories about the impact of colonialism and of Africa being a victim of the Cold War. As example, some have even blamed foreign aid as a reason for Africa's underdevelopment. Ladies and gentlemen, let us be frank. Our history of colonialism, our uneven trade relationships, even our dependence on aid should not and cannot excuse our inability to come up with better strategies for organizing and managing our human and natural resources. As the Americans would say, let's cut through the chase. The overriding factor that has bedeviled this continent's development has been governance. Leadership, bad leadership at its core. If you disagree with me, clap for me. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, between 1952 and 2000, there was a total of 85 coups d'etats in 33 countries in Africa. At least 20 African countries have experienced one or more civil wars in the last 40 years. These statistics reflect, ladies and gentlemen, how deeply entrenched the lack of leadership is across the entire continent. The legislature, the judiciary, the executive arms of government, and the public services, all of these public institutions are only as good as the people who run them. Ladies and gentlemen, I was asked to be your guest speaker today to share my thoughts on the future for young entrepreneurs on the continent. Of course, boundless opportunities exist for you today. There is no doubt that in almost all African economies, Africa presents the potential to give higher returns. Notably, take agriculture. It is largely untapped as a potential, and the exponential growth of mobile telephony demonstrates the ability of proven technologies to transform societies. To a young entrepreneur, Africa presents an array of fantastic opportunities for innovative strategies. A number of entrepreneurs across the continent are using their ingenuity and business acumen to build globally successful companies that create wealth and jobs in Africa. Companies like the M-Pesa, the mobile telephone company, mobile phone-based money transfer and microfinance company. The M-Pedigree, which addresses the problem of counterfeit drugs, are all well known. Then, of course, there are organizations like APOPO, an NGO that uses rats to sniff out anti-personnel landmines and detect TB. Africans everywhere, ladies and gentlemen, are employing their ingenuity to survive and make their mark in business. The size and the vibrancy of the informal sector across the continent can attest to that. Ladies and gentlemen, the problems we face in Africa are not due to a shortage of entrepreneurial spirit. Despite the hard work and tenacity of many entrepreneurs, inoperable government policies, poor public finance management that leads to inadequate provision of public utilities, the unfriendly macroeconomic environment, and a host of other institutional failings severely undermines strategies and destroy the dreams and efforts of entrepreneurs. Indeed, there is a direct correlation between the strength of a nation's institutions and the nation's social and economic development. It is a fact that nations which build strong institutions have done better, much better, than those with weak ones. Two countries exemplify this: Singapore and South Korea. Singapore is often cited as a model nation due to its evolution from a small struggling island with little or no resources. They even have to import water from Malaysia on a daily basis, to one of the world's richest nations characterized by order, efficiency, and good governance. Indeed, the founding father of Singapore, the late Lee Kuan Yew, credited with this success, was able to transform the nation in less than 30 years. He famously stated that Singapore was able to lift itself from third world to first world due to having visionary leadership, the best judiciary, the best legislature, and the best civil service. When you look at where Singapore is in relation to other countries, Lee Kuan Yew's assertion is undeniable. It is well known that Singapore's public services attracts and retains the best. And on almost all development indices, Singapore ranks highest. No wonder they have excellent healthcare, excellent public housing, a strong education system, low infant mortality, and high life expectancy. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is a country, as I said earlier, which even imports water from Malaysia. Unless, if I may say so, unless the full potential of the public sector in Africa is attained, we will not be able to support sustained social and economic development, much less good quality of life for our citizens. As the Singaporean example clearly shows, we can only achieve this by developing a dynamic ecosystem featuring strong institutions and a pragmatic sector strategy. Incidentally, South Korea and Malaysia gained independence in the same year as Ghana. Today, South Korea has a per capita income of $33,000 US and ranks very high on World Economic, Social, Health, Education, and Science and Technology indexes. Ghana's per capita income is in comparison $4,000. The OECD ranks South Korea in the top 10 for net take-home pay and first on a number of education rankings, including tertiary education. This year, Bloomberg Innovation Index placed South Korea at #1. In South Korea, an important part of their value system is the inculcation in the youth of service to the nation. This value system is encapsulated in the expression San Gong Hu San, which translates as first public, later private and personal. The guiding principle here is that without service to the nation, the state will not flourish. Within that system, there's less of an emphasis on individualism, which can sometimes manifest as selfishness, and more of a focus on national cohesion and prosperity. Civic-mindedness is promoted to the youth, and children are reminded of their obligations to the country as their future leaders. At the core, these principles are what have accounted for the strength of the institutions and the public sector. Here in Ghana, we have had a strong public sector before. Indeed, much of the progress made in the early years of our independence was as a result of the reliable and competent civil service. As our great leader, our founding president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, relied on a relatively small but effective civil service to execute his grand vision. Sadly, ladies and gentlemen, today the public sector cannot be said to be as efficient as it was then. And as I said, it is self-evident that the success of countries depends crucially on the strength of its institutions. And unless bright and able young men and women of your caliber choose to work in government and the public sector, I'm afraid our African nations will continue to fail their populations. I'm not unmindful of the reasons why people shun public service. Politics in particular seems to attract people motivated by considerations other than the genuine desire to make a difference. Between corruption, nepotism, and the antagonistic partisan political discourse, citizens tend quite naturally to mistrust public servants and don't feel represented by them. Beyond that, weak public institutions with outdated and long-winded bureaucratic processes, poor management practices, unsatisfactory conditions of service, and an insidious deficit in skills capacity make working in public institutions unattractive. I understand that. It is precisely because the right people don't enter public service that change has been so long in coming. Now, to quote Plato, and I quote, "One of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors." End of quote. Plato was, of course, a philosopher. Plato was, of course, a philosopher, and therefore could take liberties and use uncompromising language. I would tend to be more charitable. What I will say, though, is that this present reality notwithstanding, it is imperative that top-performing young people like yourselves make it your ambition to be an integral part of the solution. Real transformation of the public sector must be led from within and supported by actors who are committed to change. Now, let me reflect briefly on the SOS again for a moment. In this college, we have an ideal model of what visionary leadership can achieve. 25 years after its establishment, we continue to witness the realization of President Putin's vision. There is an important lesson here for you. Without the day-to-day commitment of former administrators like the founding principal and Dr. Mrs. Margaret Nkrumah, as well as the present administration, faculty and staff, the vision of the founding president would have remained a mere dream. So listen, affirm your own vision. Affirm your commitment to your own vision by taking consistent actions towards its realization. This requires a lot of discipline and hard work. That is the reality. And of course you know this because you have made it to this graduation. You couldn't have made it without affirming your commitment to succeed academically. Carry the same principle with you through life, because without action, no vision can be realized. And as we celebrate 25 years of excellence and 25 years of knowledge in the service of Africa, I ask, where is this cadre of skilled young people who have been primed through their SOS experience to be the future leaders of our continent? The evidence suggests that the graduates of this fine school have not yet put their knowledge in the service of Africa's public service. In Ghana, at least 25 years of this fine college, you have not produced one assemblyman, one MP, or one minister. Mind you, ladies and gentlemen, you are not the only guilty ones. A friend recently made an observation that graduates of the top 10 secondary schools in Ghana make up less than 20% of the government and the legislature. It is distressing that our top students who proceed to attend some of the best universities in the world tend to stay away, leaving the continent without the leadership attributes desperately needed to effect change. They end up in the West in pursuit of better opportunities. Ghana, for instance, has one of the worst cases of brain drain in the world relative to its population. Indeed, we are second only to Haiti. We should find this pretty alarming. The notion, ladies and gentlemen, that European and North American countries can provide better opportunities to African youth is seductive, but I'm afraid is often a mischaracterization. Opportunities made available to migrants in the West can sometimes be grossly exaggerated, while conviction in the potential of our youth to change our society is understated. It is true that living and working in the developed world has its conveniences. However, here on this continent, you have the opportunity to change the course of the future and then leave behind a legacy that will be far-reaching in its scope and its impact. Besides, there's truly no place like home. Where are you going to eat fufu? When I go to London and my friends bring this artificial fufu, it's not exciting. This is where it is. Having said that, in today's context of globalization, you will often find yourselves living and working within global spaces. You have been privileged to have had an international perspective embedded in your curriculum so early on. Students and alumni, the Pan-African experience you have had is rare for most Africans. The ideal of solidarity that has been inculcated in you and the experience of living and learning side by side with students from different countries will stand you in good stead in the global arena. Use the understanding and insight you gained to foster good working relationships with your international counterparts and continue to pursue sensitivity in your dealings with individuals. African solidarity and cooperation is essential to the progress of the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, the inspiring and ambitious project undertaken by SOS International College is truly praiseworthy. Providing the best students from SOS villages in Africa the opportunity to move on to university after secondary school is genuinely commendable. And the college has been a resounding success. Perhaps, if I may say so, over the next 25 years, we are praying that we can see it expand to its embrace to include more underprivileged children from outside the SOS fraternity. Nowadays, innovative ways of sourcing funds are available, and I'm sure that by working with industry and other organizations like churches, endowment funds, scholarship schemes, and other funding vehicles can be established to support more children to attend this exceptional academic institution. To maintain these high standards of education in spite of the difficult era we find ourselves in is not easy. The administration, faculty, and staff have every reason to be proud. So, as you do, the graduates of 2015. Now to the parents and the caregivers of these talented young men and women. I want to thank you for the sacrifices you've made and the hard work it has taken to bring them this far. As a parent myself, I do empathize. The pride you feel today is deserved and well earned. I'm sure they will continue to make your efforts worthwhile. In conclusion, let me remind you that the path will not always be smooth. There will be many stumbling blocks. And when you find that success is becoming elusive, please don't give in to the temptation to take the easy road. When the trying times come, as they will, rely strongly on the moral and ethical values that your training here has given you. And in the timeless words of Ralph Emerson, the influential 19th century American literary figure, I'm quoting, "Don't follow where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." End of quote. Let these timeless words remind you that the vision for yourself requires that you break new ground. Shore up your courage and do what you know is right. You are among the finest and the best trained in Africa. You have what it takes to face your challenges head on. Make your hard work count for something, for yourself, for your country, and of course for Africa. I know you will build a meaningful life and make Africa proud. Thank you.
I think he deserves a standing ovation.